there's a reason why I want to bring this up.
Yeah.
It's about
Oh shit.
Peter Dutton.
Yeah.
So there's this new problem, which before I get into this, I want to make an announcement. Just before I came on this pod, I got a message from someone that lives in Melbourne, and they asked me this. They were saying that, hey, there's a few refugees and asylum seekers that need help in terms of like housing and stuff or whatever. Do you know anyone
like legal,
that is involved in this area? And I was like, I don't know anyone personally, but what I can do is I can do a pod shout out. And if one of you listening is involved with asylum seekers or know someone that is
like lawyers or like NGOs.
I think NGO, anything really. I think so I can hook you up with the people or like the representative that needs help.
Get in contact.
Yeah, so I don't know. That's
because I think they reached out to Ali, and Ali was like, "I'm still doing my law degree, bro."
Well, I have no experience in this, so I don't know how I could be of help. But
should you give in? Do you want an?
Just
email?
like hit me up on Instagram or email me on like podcast at friendlyjordies.com. And yeah,
PSA
that would work it out. But
good on you.
Here's the thing about asylum seekers. So ever since there's this huge, I think it's a criminal scam, which is right under our nose. And because it's about asylum seekers, no one really gives a shit or knows about it. So the scam is, ever since the Liberal government came in, whatever, in like 2013, 14, the whole stopping of the boat people, on the surface, it stopped. But then there's this new scam, which has been brewing. So what's happening is that organizations within Australia are asking migrants from like countries like Fiji, Thailand, India to come to Australia on a visit visa, apply for asylum over here, and there's a huge demand for picking fruit in regional Australia that you could get sponsored for, and that would be your pathway to immigration. The problem is this pathway does not work, like, because in order to be considered a refugee, you need to be a genuine refugee. You cannot be an economic migrant.
I was going to say asylum is not an
so
economic migrant.
So 95% of these people are getting rejected.
Right.
So basically then they have to go back home.
And they were told...
But they have been told that they would
wrong
get
information. Really?
So they've been basically scammed off of money. The thing is,
shit.
They don't go back immediately, so they still stay here for like 3 years. And it just... once their application gets rejected, it goes into the tribunal, which is called the Administrative Appeals Tribunal. It is it's before court. It's like a independent body which you don't even have to be a lawyer to be a judge in it, but they basically assess and say if the Department of Immigration made any mistake.
Mm-hmm. So you don't have to be a lawyer.
Interestingly, look, I know a bit about AAT because I've studied about this. You don't have to be a lawyer.
There's just a fruit picker there being like, he's like, when the mango goes down, the gavel.
You know what it is? There's actually a huge corruption bit. It's actually people, Liberal Party politicians that basically have been fired or have left.
Yeah.
They get cushiony jobs in the AAT where they sit there and they get like, I don't know, 300,000, 400,000 a year out of
consultants.
And they just decide fates of refugees and shit.
Right.
But anyway, so it's been building up this backlog of cases that go into the AAT because all of them are getting rejected. You cannot get a visa if you're not genuinely threatened, or those are the rules. And the government doesn't seem to be doing anything about it. But the cases keep building up.
Do they have they admitted that? Is it like has it been proven? Have they actually admitted that they've given contrary information?
Well, I'm guessing the organizations that have basically have scammed these people.
That was government organizations.
No, not government. Organized, like business, private enterprises that have tried to do it. I think their defense in court would obviously, if they are even taken to court, like it seems like a thing that the government does not really care much about.
Right.
But their argument would be that we didn't guarantee you that you're going to get it. We said this is a potential pathway. Now, if it gets rejected, I'm sorry.
But do you think they said that?
They probably 100%. They would have said that.
Like
Their incentive is for them to come over because they're getting a lot of money from it.
Yeah.
I'm
what's
pretty
your
certain
opinion? Do you
that
think
they would not guarantee it.
So do you think they've been scammed?
I think they've been scammed.
Right.
I think they've been sold a dream that is not possible.
Hmm.
The dream was that because of COVID or whatever, there's this huge labor shortage, which is true. They would have Googled it and they would have noticed that, yes, there is a labor shortage. And Australia needs people to pick fruit. Again, that's also true. But the pathway to picking that fruit was faulty.
I mean, I sort of assumed that was just how the policy was anyway. But it wouldn't have been fair. It would have been fucked if they were, you know, if they gave false information or false pretenses, or if they even sort of presented the narrative in this way where it's like, this is how you can, get Australian citizenship, and then just being like, just kidding, like that would be fucked, you know.
It would be, and you could only imagine like people that come here, they want to burn all their bridges before coming, right?
Right, shit.
I know so many. You know what's the other thing? It's not just the economic impact of having to go back. It's the fucking emotional impact that it has on people. I know personally, I know people that are trying to get citizenship, and one of the biggest arguments that they make for just like make or break, I need to get it, like there's no other option, is that the social stigma that they face if they go back.
Really?
Basically, as soon as they go back without citizenship, their entire community say, you're a fucking loser.
Really?
You went there and you still came back. Like, is there anyone more useless than you on earth? So they
is that what it's like?
Their families do it. They're like, you were our ticket to like, some sort of like a better life, and you have come back. Like, we invested in you. We sent you over there,
right? Because they had to. Yeah, because they're not like rich people. They had to save. No. Yeah, that would be hard.
And the thing is, if you're rich, coming to Australia or any other first world country is rather easy.
Yeah,
because a lot of people go through like these business visa programs, which is invest $2 million and you will get citizenship. Yeah. But these guys don't have the $2 million.
But surely that's been. I would assume that was the policy from forever. That it was like, you come over, you work for a while, maybe you get sponsored, maybe you don't. I don't think it's
changing. I think there's a long-term trend over here. The long-term trend was that migrations really began. These large-scale migrations have existed for thousands of years, but large-scale migrations where people like me are very commonly observable, let's say, in Australia. Less so in Australia. You go to places like the UK, the US. US is like a majority, or is going to be majority minorities. All of this is accelerated since World War II, right? After World War II, there was an immediate need. A lot of men had died, and you needed factories that needed people to work in. So women filled in a lot of that vacuum, and then they got these workers from the third world. If you're in France, they picked ex-colonies like Algeria and Morocco. If you were in the UK, again, ex-colonies like India, and they pretty much owned most of the world, Afro-Caribbean. And the demand was steady because the Western world was still largely a manufacturing society that needed labor. We're now moving away from that, where we need less people. Our economy is changing. For the same job, you need less people, and
it's more about specialization.
It's more about specialization. So the requirement for immigrants is just lowering. Having said that, there's massive skill shortages in Australia because of COVID. Like I know computer programmers that would have gotten $60,000 job if they were lucky, that are now being like offered $100,000 because there's just been skilled migration was halted because of COVID. So there is still a big requirement, but those are highly skilled people.
Yeah,
that was not the case in the post-war immigration. Places like Canada literally picked up entire villages. They would go to places like India. So the Canadian government would say, okay, they'll go to like places like India. It's like, we'll take an entire village.
Shit.
That's how many people they needed. That's clearly not the case. So the migration rate will have to drop down, particularly those kinds of migrations. And the other problem about that is that there are more people that want to leave their countries. So this is what's creating that rift.
Yeah, okay.
And you'll have to deal with it. There's no other way to. And with climate change, there's going to be more and more people that would want to come in.
Oh, that completely changes.
And there's going to be
the
less
story.
and less people that we would want in.
Yeah, I mean, so there is a huge demand of like immigration. Like there's heaps of people that just want to still come to Australia.
Yeah, people still want to come to. And with COVID, most of the economies in the world have contracted, which is one of the biggest push factors. I'll give you an example. Like when my parents decided to move here, it was during a recession in Pakistan, but more importantly, it was during like violent. There was an uptake of this was during like post 9/11 terrorist attacks. So Pakistan went from being largely safe to really not that safe for a bit, and now it's gone back to again being relatively safe. Had those two combinations of like extremism increasing and an economic recession, had they not occurred, I wonder if my parents would have decided to move.
They probably wouldn't have.
They probably wouldn't have. And so those are one of the larger push factors. Because my dad had a decent job and like we were part of the it was easier for us to move.
I mean, I don't think it's like, I understand. I think if there's someone like fleeing from like a war-torn country, it's like a legal right to seek asylum. But my problem is like I don't see. I think apart from that factor, if you are a skilled worker and you're specialized. Isn't it just common sense that we want people, apart from people that are fleeing war-torn areas, that aside, you want people that are skilled as opposed to just like unskilled. It's literally the difference to me. Like your parents had either skilled or like money. I think that's kind of important. Like it's just to come like, like economic migrants with no skills that can't speak the language is like.
Well,
I mean, I don't like.
Here's a technical problem with having that view. The view is right. Like in terms of economic utilitarianism, yes, you don't need people that are unskilled. You need people that are highly skilled.
I mean, you don't have to call it that.
No, but it is what it is. But the problem is that
I wouldn't go that far.
All of our international laws were set up post World War II, where the world was different. So right now, legally, your opinion is wrong because what you're saying is illegal. Anyone
right
that seeks asylum in any other country based on persecution that is racial, political, ethnic, there's a few other categories in here, you have to offer them asylum and you have to process them.
Right.
It is illegal for you to send them back.
But how do you quantify that? Like, what is the?
Well, then that's what the entire application process is about.
Right. Yeah.
You decide if they're legit or not. But this was set up at a time when most of the countries wanted people like that.
Yeah.
They had no problem with it. They set this precisely because they wanted a lot of labor coming in from these places. Like the U.S. was. They came up with these humanitarian sort of laws, but it was also like
it was mainly an
economic rationale.
Yes,
behind it.
Yeah.
Usually, economic rationales complement humanitarian approaches.
Totally, yeah.
Now we're living in a world where our laws are based on that time, where the economic rationale has now changed. So now all of a sudden, you're getting countries that are just not willing to accept international law. You get a bunch of boat people.
Reform the law.
Let's say like you live in Greece.
Yeah.
And there's a boat full of Libyan migrants that come to your doorstep. There is a war in Libya. They qualify all kinds of asylum seekers.
If there's a war, I think absolutely that should be.
But Greece is going through one of the worst contractual recessions in their country.
They're still going through that, right?
Their economy just has to readjust. They've shrunk by 20% and they've just stayed there.
That's fucked.
It's brutal. But and you understand them. They're like, imagine 20% of your economy shrinking, and then there's a bunch of these people that come to your doorstep who you're legally obliged to accept. You know what ends up happening? Some right-wing parties go like, fuck it.
Isn't that what happens?
That's what's happened.
Yeah, are they still in Greece? They're called like, there's a right-wing party.
Yeah, some of them live in Greece. Some of them have been thrown back, which is, the thing is, even migrants realize that their future isn't in Greece. They're usually wanting a passage to Germany.
Yeah.
So Greece just like, all right, you have to take another passage because we're not allowing you. So they end up just being stranded. So anyway, so what I'm saying is that either this is the problem with these universal constitutional laws that we end up creating. Like, from now onward, for the rest of humanity, this will be the law. It's like, dude, circumstances change. And your perceptions of human rights will change with that because the world is a harsh place. Humanitarian is...
Well, it's a forever shifting place. I mean, there's a difference between being an ideologue and being pragmatic. Even, do you know what I mean? Like, it's almost like that law is sustainable till a point where something is physically unsustainable. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can't...
Yes, I understand what you mean.
Kill him with kindness, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, we've got, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, it's sort of just like, this many people, our economy can't support this many people. It's like, well, we should try to give them a shot. And it's like, sure, but the infrastructure might crumble. The whole thing might fall to shit.
Yes, and it's clearly evident, at least in the last 20 years, where in Australia, the infrastructure... has not been able to keep up with the immigration. Yes,
exactly. And you can thank the libs again for that.
Yeah, and well, this is the case even in the US. Their infrastructure is crumbling. Is
that because the Republicans?
It's both.
Right.
To be honest, like it's hard to just pick a villain over here. It's both.
So you're saying that the laws should be reformed, or they should have?
I'm saying, I'm not saying that look, ideally in a world, these laws are good. Yeah, you don't want to turn back someone that is being, but there's that has a reasonable chance of getting killed.
No, I'm not saying you should. I'm not disagreeing with that at all. But I'm saying that like those, look, you can, if you read a book like The Strange Death of Europe by Douglas Murray and look at the numbers, in Germany and France and England to a lesser extent, the law has been abused by economic migrants. That's just a fact. And like on a grand scale. It
has, but that's what I'm saying. Countries were okay with that, miss. Because they wanted it.
No, I know that, but like, I don't know exactly what you said. I don't know if that's still the situation.
That is definitely not the situation. But
but I understand.
In an ideal world, look, you need to reformulate laws depending on your conditions. But here is the issue. These laws came into being after World War II.
Yeah.
World War II was such a pivotal point because what you had was basically America being the dictator of the world. It emerged as, with the Soviet Union, the superpower.
Yeah.
And the Soviet Union had its own issues. So basically it was able to set up all of these laws independently. Today, the U.S. is not nearly in that situation. The U.S. is, my opinion... crumbling, and there's another segment that we need to talk about, which is relating to the U.S. crumbling. So, but let's just say they nearly don't have the same amount of authority that they possessed after the Second World War.
Yeah.
In order to reformulate these laws and get everyone on board, you need to have a figure like that. The other solution is that you try to work it in like in a multilateral method where like you get the big players, which is China, US, the security and the Security Council members, the 5, and Germany, essentially all would have to agree with the new rules. And the way the world is moving, miss, these frictions are increasing, not decreasing. So I just don't think it's likely that these rules would be reassessed. There just isn't any political space for it to happen.
Right. Oh, because in regards to wars.
In regards to refugees, how do we deal with the refugee problem?
Yeah.
So the likelihood of coming up with new laws or new rules seem to diminish with time. Simultaneously, the problem of refugees is increasing and is projected to like boom soon, especially because of climate change.
Yeah. So that is like that factor is so pivotal that it's almost like a completely different story. It's like that's like an existential crisis. It's not even about, do you know what I mean? It's such a big issue.
It's a huge issue.
Yeah, like it's almost like practically dealing with that is almost an impossibility. The only thing, like the only, from my opinion, is the only way, you know, you look at the source of the problem. The source of the problem is green, you know, fossil, like gas, coal, fossil fuel emissions. You want to save, you want to solve that problem, address global warming, you know, climate change.
Yes, you do. Desperately, you need to do that because if you don't, then
it's starting to freak me out for sure.
The others will take over. You know, like it's just not sustainable if you keep. But
No,
let's
it's
just
not.
say,
It's not sustainable.
Let's just say in an ideal world,
let
we
alone-
restrict ourselves to like the 2.5 degree rise, right? The global temperature rise. That is enough to create a lot of problems. We're probably at like what 1.3, 1.2 right now, and
Let
we've
alone
already started noticing.
Let alone biodiversity and the bees and fucking plants, like literally biodiversity, like that is. Everyone will die.
Yeah, and you've already with 1%. What you now have is internally displaced refugees. You see that pop up,
And you mentioned that,
particularly near the equator, where
well, like the not Australasia, Polynesia, that region.
Polynesia, anywhere that's closer to the equator, because it goes all the way from like South America or like Central America and Polynesia on the other end. But places where there is a high concentration of population, that's where the 1 degree is really showing effects. So I was looking at these studies. There were 2 studies, 3 actually, that I personally have read up on. One was based in Bangladesh. Bangladesh is, again, it's basically a delta with lots of water.
What's a delta mean?
It's basically where all of the rivers from the Himalayas, the Ganges River, and all of these rivers end up flowing into the Bay of Bengal.
Right.
And Bangladesh is basically located around there. So
Gotcha.
They've got plenty of water, which is why there's such a high it's the most densely populated area in the world. So there's extremely high concentration of people in this small area.
Most humans per square meter.
Most humans per square meter, essentially, and that is true. And it's because of the abundance of water. But the problem with global warming is that, look, the icebergs seem to be melting and the water level seems to be rising. So it started off with the peripheries of Bangladesh being swallowed up by the ocean. So you had houses and villages that were just at the river banks, but now the river banks are the river. So they've had to flee inwards into their own country. So they're not going, and they're facing problems with these other villages that are more inland that these people are taking over, right? So that's with just 1%. Eventually, this would increase. So that's one example. The other example was...
Can you link me to some articles about that?
I can definitely do
Specifically, that's interesting, yeah.
In Pakistan, there's a desert called... actually, Pakistan and India both share this desert. It's called the Thar Desert, which is a really interesting place because it's a harsh land, but it was able to sustain population because you can grow a few crops there. It's one of the only deserts in the world where you can grow crops.
Mad.
And because of the rainfall patterns changing, so that place is becoming inhabitable now.
Right.
The droughts are lasting longer. There's more malnutrition, which is being caused because the crops are not at the same level. So those people have to move. And they're moving either inwards towards Pakistan, towards more settled areas, and they're facing issues over there, or they're going, because a lot of these people are actually Hindu, so they move across the border to India. Either way, there's refugees, internal refugees.
Shit.
That's one example. Then in India, Maharashtra, a state. Sorry, I can go on and on where it's already evident. The problem is that it's beginning in areas
that are already arid and
are vulnerable
to
climate change, and it will creep up if we keep going at the same level rate.
Shit.
And they're gonna come to us. Indonesia, one of the big examples is
Floods.
Indonesia. It's just because Indonesia is such a weird place, right? It's a bunch of islands, and so it's more susceptible to water levels
tsunamis
rising.
and
Indonesia
floods.
is really close to us, so those refugees are gonna come our way. So it's just a thing that's the rate of refugees is gonna keep increasing whereas the likelihood of these problem solving is going to keep decreasing.
Yeah, fucking hell.
Bummer.
It's yeah, I don't know. It's brutal. I mean, Indonesians are nice, but
yeah, but like I'm an advocate of Big Australia, but even I recognize that this is not the way I wanted it to be bigger.
How many? What's a number? Indonesians, give me a number.
Indonesia is the most populous Muslim country in the world, so their numbers I think are close to 300 million people.
Shit! That's a lot of fucking
huge
people.
Huge country.
What's Australia? 20 million?
24 million. But all 300 million people aren't going to move.
No, I know, but that's
enough wood for us to be petrified.
That's a big.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah, I don't know. Well, look, food for thought.